This conference will now be recorded.
Hey everybody, Jordan Girth here from the National Weather Service Office of Observations. Hope you are doing well and thank you for joining us for the Satellite Book Club seminar series. This is session number 41. Hope everybody's doing well. Obviously some big severe weather yesterday and some snow over the previous weekend across Colorado and Wyoming. That was pretty significant. So thanks and hope you're doing well. Today's presentation is on the use of lightning and the NOAA CIMSS ProbSevere Model in tornado detection over the mid-Atlantic. The presenter is Trenton Davis, meteorologist from the Philadelphia Mount Holly WFO. And our facilitator is John Gagan, Science and Operations Officer from the Milwaukee Sullivan Forecast Office. Just a few reminders before we get started that the session is being recorded. There will be an opportunity for Q&A after the presentation, and we'll field the questions in the order they're asked in the chat. We are always looking for future presenters, so if you have an application you'd like to share with the field, please get in touch with us. And the training team can help create training materials that you may be unaware of or are unavailable. And we got Brian Mata, Office of the Chief Learning Officer, that can guide you with information and field your questions regarding that. I'd just like to thank our Tower S team, particularly Kashad Bowman, the Office of the Chief Learning Officer, and GOES-ARM JPSS program for their support of the Satellite Book Club. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Trent, who is a third-year meteorologist at the National Weather Service Office in Mount Holly, in charge of the social media and storm survey teams. He also provides assistance to IDSS and severe weather teams. After studying lightning as a NOAA Hollings Scholar in Cheyenne, he has continued that research and looking into ways that lightning can be used to aid in NWS warning operations. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Trent.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks everyone for joining. This is one of the first book club presentations I've done, so I'm happy to have you all. And yeah, so I'll get started here. So first I'll talk about a little bit of the background and motivation that started this research. So given you know where Philadelphia is here in the Mid-Atlantic, we have interesting topography issues. So as you can see, we kind of run into like a joining of the coastal plain with the Piedmont and then the Appalachians. And so this causes sometimes a unique the problem with the way thunderstorms develop. And so I just thought I would give you guys a little bit of reference with what we're looking at. Another interesting thing is we're not Tornado Alley, but we do have our fair share of severe weather, actually probably more than what you would think. Moving here in 2018, I didn't really realize that we would actually, we do issue quite a bit of warnings and we have a lot of activity. One of the problems is with the storms here, they tend to, as you know, they're not always supercells. They tend to be a little bit more multi-cell in the thunderstorm mode. They also are kind of short-lived. So if you get tornadoes, they can sometimes spin up within like 5-minute time spans that radars can look at. And so that can be a little bit problematic if you're on the warning desk trying to see what's happening. Also, we have multiple radars we're trying to look at. So something, I was just kind of looking at something that could help us have a better aid into saying, hey, this storm is something we need to watch. We also have, I think we are the second or third most populous CWA. We have about 12 million people in our CWA, and there's roughly 50 million people close by within the I-95 megapolis from Philly to Boston. And so I was just looking at in the study a way to provide some more qualitative and quantitative information to help us with warning decisions, because when we issue warnings, it impacts a lot of people. So to kind of show what I was just mentioning here, in the past couple of years, they've been very active in terms of severe weather for us. So as you can see on the bottom left here in 2020 and 2019, those are our two most active years in terms of tornado warnings that we've issued. 2011 was also a pretty active year. And so we've had a lot of tornadoes. I think one thing about this though is social media is helping us detect more of these. More people are sharing and interacting with us. And then on the bottom right, you can see the number of warnings we issued there, so 32. And then we thought we were going to be tied, but we actually issued 36 last year, so it's pretty active. And there's a look on the upper right of the tornado warning polygons we had in the last season, 2 seasons there. And here's a look at some of the local storm reports that we've issued in the past 2 years. As I was saying, we have a lot of people, so this is not an easy job, and we get a lot of interaction with people. So as you can see, we were 2 of the top offices for local storm reports, and these are just convective. I don't have the like winter LSRs in here. And so yeah, it's been interesting. A lot of people send us information. That's when things are happening, and there's a lot of impacts when severe weather does happen. And so when we have misses, a lot of people notice, and then when we do well, a lot of people notice that as well. And also you can see we've had a lot of convective watches over the past 2 years as well. I thought this was kind of interesting, so I wanted to show it, especially in terms of severe thunderstorm watches. You can clearly see there's a bit of an enhancement over the mid-Atlantic there. And I haven't really researched exactly why this is, but just kind of showing that, hey, severe weather tends to, there's almost a prevalence of it on the other side, the lee side of the Appalachians. So it's definitely something not to discredit. Given that this is a satellite talk, I wanted to kind of focus a little bit more on the GLM aspect of this. And so I'll touch a little bit on ProbSevere, but I want to talk more about GLM. And so a lot of you probably already are familiar with this instrument, but I just wanted to share a couple quick slides here. So the way GLM works is it detects these little bursts of energy that emit light. And so those are groups here. So you can see in our diagram, we have these groups, and then that is put onto another grid where it's classified into events. And then from that, those are grouped as flashes. So here on this diagram here on the right, you can see another way that that's being depicted. And so there's a bunch of algorithms that spatially and temporally combine all of these, this information. And then that is also decimated before it's sent to us here at our forecast office. So I'll show you how that works. So from here, this is what GLM will be looking at, and then it sends to us this decimated information. That way, it can get here in a good span of time, and then it will put it onto this grid because you have like a parallax effect. So it's not looking down on nadir. So we're looking at it projects it onto a grid, and then it can from there combine it into these pixels, which are flash extent densities. So anytime I say fed, that's what I'm talking about, flash extent density. And then we can look at like a 1 minute or 5 minute summation of these. And that's a lot of research has shown this is the most useful product in terms of looking at lightning trends for issuing warnings. And that's kind of what I found in my research, and I'll show those things coming up here. Here's an image or a GIF I made yesterday from the severe weather, and just to kind of show what this looks like to us. I don't know if everyone here has worked the radar desk. This is kind of like what I would look at just to kind of get an overview, sense of situational awareness. So you can see have the flashes overlaid of the visible satellite, and this is the flash extent densities here, and then you have the warnings. So I like to look for, I kind of mentally look for lightning jumps in terms of the flash extent densities. So if I see brighter colors, warm colors starting to appear, I'll probably focus more time on the warning desk looking at that. So I'll jump to this other aspect of my research that I kind of started before I really went into it. And I wanted to survey NWS forecasters to see what are people looking at when they're working the warning desk. And so I sent this survey out here, and I got a lot of feedback. I was really impressed. We had 159 people respond, and by far and large here, in the first question, I asked forecasters to rank their guidance in terms of what are you looking at first and foremost when issuing warnings. Unsurprisingly, radar is what people look at the most, but then it's pretty evenly distributed on what people look at after that. So satellite is on there. I did ProbSevere LSRs, and it also kind of depends on your region, whether you have sufficient radar coverage. And I actually had some people from Alaska respond to this, and so they don't have very good radar coverage in some of their areas. And also, ProbSevere doesn't work up there. So, but yeah, I actually found lightning is very helpful for a lot of people out west, and even up in Alaska where they don't have good radar coverage. Another question I asked was, how often do you use the GLM products and or other like lightning products when issuing warnings? And so this ranged from 1 being never to 5 being always. And so this was kind of interesting. I looked at a lot of people do look at it, but then there are some people that maybe aren't as comfortable with it, or they don't know what to look for. And this is the best quote I had, but I actually had similar quotes from several people saying, I look at it, but I'm not really comfortable with it. So I wish there was more training. So that's something I saw a lot about, and I know this is a new product. So I think it might be helpful if in the Weather Service we have more of a training on what to look for with lightning, because a lot of people just have it up, but they're like, I don't know what to do with this. Because I'm going to send the slides out, I'm not going to read all of this, but these are some of the feedback about GLM that I thought was interesting. So I pulled some quotes here. A lot of people, to sum this up, said, oh, I look for the trends. It can help me if I'm not really certain of this, handful of storms I'm watching. If one starts to have an uptick in lightning, I'll pay more attention to it. And that's exactly what I do here. And so I was happy to see people mentioning that. So to, again, kind of sum this up here, there was similar feelings toward GLM and also total lightning products across most of the WFOs that responded, that it kind of helps them tip the scale when they're thinking of issuing a warning, but they're not going to fully issue a warning just on that alone. Spatial variability is a factor. These tools can be helpful in areas of sparse radar coverage. And a lot of people mentioned some helpful training would be of assistance to them. The science is still evolving, and so as we learn more, we should definitely develop some training on this, I think. So the main topic, or the research area of this project that I wanted to look at, was I investigated 15 tornadoes from 2019 that we had in our CWA. This actually became a little bit more difficult than I expected because, again, like I said, the multi-cell storm mode that we have in the eastern US, that made it very difficult to track these storms. And so ProbSevere, which I'll show here coming up, it tracks storms, but since storms are merging and splitting, it becomes very difficult to fully capture what is a storm because it's dancing with other storms. So I had to weed this case load way down, and I was only able to get 4 cases that were really trackable that did produce tornadoes, and then I looked at 2 cases that occurred on the same days, similar storm structure, but they didn't produce tornadoes. So I use these as control cases. And now that I have the framework for this, I want to look into adding more cases from 2020 and maybe some of the surrounding regions, since ProbSevere and GLM cover all these regions. And so I looked at, for the lightning jumps, to calculate these, I kind of used a method developed by Chris Schultz in this paper here. And so first you kind of smooth out the flash rate average over time steps. That's in these 2 steps here. And then you kind of take a rate of change of those, and that's what's going on in this step. And then you can further smooth out that rate of change and then look for the standard deviations. For this, because I wasn't looking at as long-lived storms, I didn't want to do that, so I just looked at, following what he did, areas that had 2 sigma jumps in that standard deviation. And I should mention this is averaging over like 10 time steps, so it's basically like a 10-minute average of the flash rate. And so that's, we'll jump into the first case, which this was kind of my poster child case, I would say, of this. So as you can see here, these little rings are the ProbSevere tracking the storm as they move along. And so yeah, I'll talk about some of the results of this. So the Morgantown case, I'm going to more focus on these bottom 2 panels here. So you have the flash rate from the total lightning, and you have the flash channel density, and that's basically the FED that I talked about from GLM. So you can see the change there. And then on the bottom here, in the pink areas are when we had the tornado warnings, and then the dark gray areas when the actual tornado occurred for this case. And so a trend I kind of noticed amongst the 4 cases is you have this uptick in all the lightning parameters, and then kind of a decrease, and then everything goes back up right as the tornado is occurring, more or less. So that was an interesting trend that I tended to find. So it can almost give you kind of a false sense of security. You're like, oh, okay, the lightning trends are going down, and then, oh, there's a tornado. But I think, as I was saying, the flash extent density tends to, you can see that change happening a little bit more easily. So that, for me, it tends to be a little bit more helpful. I'm not going to show this for time's sake, but feel free to watch it on your own. Another case that I wanted to look at that occurred on the same day as the Morgantown tornado was in Stanhope, New Jersey. And this storm was an EF1. The Morgantown one was an EF2. And they occurred at similar times here. And same information's going on here, and as I showed in the Morgantown case. So it's a little bit more chaotic here, and again, the flash channel densities become even a little bit more chaotic. And I should mention, in the purple areas on both of these, I'm showing the 2 sigma flash rate jumps, so that way you can see where those technically defined flash jumps are occurring. And a new part of this study that I wanted to do was looking at the flash jumps in the flash channel densities, not just the raw flash rate. And that is shown in the black here. So they tend to follow a similar trend, but looking at the flash rates cannot be as, it can be a little bit harder to pinpoint rate of change here. And especially because sometimes we can have lower flash rate storms than over, say, the plains. But looking at the flash channels, that can actually be a little bit more helpful, and you can see the changes a little bit more easily. And that's shown down here in the bottom a little bit more too, where you can see the raw flash rate and even the GLM detected flash rate don't change as much as the flash channel extent densities do here. And that occurred in this case right as we issued the tornado warning. Here's another case that I wanted to show as a weaker tornado. Similar trends happened here. This video is very interesting, so I do want to show it. This is the Mount Laurel tornado that occurred in 2019. It was pretty popular on the media markets. As you can see here, it was caught on security cam, and it flipped this car over. It was an interesting survey. It did a little damage to the buildings around it. And so it was cool to add this case to my studies here after seeing what it looked like in real life. To sum up, amongst the 4 cases that I looked at, I just did some box and whisker plots of what the information can be teased out as. So looking at the maximum flash rate and channel densities. So flash rates here, channel densities are on the right. You can see there's a little bit of variance amongst the values here. So it's important not to really look at exact values, but the trends when you're looking at lightning and issuing warnings. You don't want to get caught up in, oh, it hasn't reached this exact value yet, so I shouldn't do anything with it. It's all kind of relevant to whatever day you're looking at, whatever environment you're in. And that's something that we're trying to work at, or informing our forecasters out here at our office. Because some days you don't have very much CAPE, you're not going to get as much lightning. And you can even see that in terms of lightning jump times from when you see an increase in the total flash rate and the flash extent densities. You can get anywhere from 80 minutes to sometimes they occur almost simultaneously. But I'm interested to add more cases to this and see if we can get a better idea of what these values are. And here were two null cases that I looked at that were on the same days as tornadoes occurred, but these storms didn't produce tornadoes. This was when the first damage happened. So you can see kind of a similar trend with a lot of variability in the flashes. Yep, then I think I'm almost done here. Yep, conclusions. So I calculated an average lead time of a little under 30 minutes, about 26 minutes between lightning jump and when the tornadoes occurred. So this made it was a little bit difficult because of the cell mode that made it hard to differentiate individual cells. And then in the future, I plan to add more cases from last year. So the three takeaways I have are lightning, number one, can be used as a useful aid alongside radar. Recognizing the trends is more important than getting caught up in exact numbers, which some of the values I had maybe could be used as guidelines. And then the third, you don't want to just issue warnings based on whatever's happening with lightning. You want to have some confidence from radar and then use that as a backup, as an aid. And with that, those are my acknowledgements. And I'm done. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Trent. Excellent presentation. Encourage everybody to stay on for discussion here, and you'll see shortly a feedback survey that'll be posted into the chat room. Please feel free to share any feedback you have on this session or any of the SBC sessions in the short survey that'll be posted. Just a reminder, a week from today, we'll have on Thursday, March 25th at noon Eastern Daylight Time, Joseph Patton from UMD CIMSS, who will review the GLM minimum flash area. So that'll be next week, same time as this week. And I also encourage you to contact the Tower S team with Lee and Kashad for questions about the SBC or for configuration of satellite products. And more information will follow in an email from the Towers team in those situations. So let's see. I don't know if we have any questions just yet, but I want to remind folks to submit questions in the chat room, or if you want to ask a question verbally, to please raise your hand or note that in the chat room. And while we wait, I'll take advantage here because as a Sioux myself, Trent, you know, one of the things that's difficult is trying to infuse data sets like these into warning operations, especially well-established warning operations for folks that are very experienced and have been veteran forecasters here. So what would you do? I went back and looked while you were giving this presentation, Trent, and looked at some of the written feedback that you got, and some of it seems conflicting, which is interesting. But one of the things that stuck out to me, GLM is nice for monitoring trends during severe events, but for discriminating severe versus non-severe, it's not as practical as compared to radar. True.
Yes.
But make your case here. Why would you use the GLM? What would be a situation that you think would be a great augmentation to?
Yeah. So as I was saying, there's been a few days where, like you said, it could be a big severe day, and you're tasked with looking. You sectorized. You're looking at, say, I'm in the northern half of my CWA. It can help you perform triage with, what storms should I pay more attention to? Do I want to, SVS the storm and let it expire this morning, or do I want to issue a new one? That it can kind of help you with that. But I always say you kind of want to use it as, like, say you need like 3 points of verification. So you have like radar. It's, the environment's already good that day. Then you're like, oh, then the lightning's, it's being very active with lightning. And I should also mention, if on the ProbSevere website, you can look at time series plots of these products, and that can help you see it actually calculates the sigma jumps. So you can look at that if you want to track your storms. And that's what I tend to do. So I say, hey, this storm has jumped over 2 sigma in the total flash rate. I should probably issue a warning on it because radar looks pretty confident.
Yeah, so a quick follow-up to that. You showed for multiple examples that you showed. That's a pretty busy plot, right? There's a lot going on there. The flash density and the flash rate. You could almost confuse for an echocardiogram showing the heart rate of a radar operator during a storm, right? So, what would you recommend? Again, thinking about adoption of this, as something that's more routine in people's approaches to radars and warning operations. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it looks you can see the up and down there. Would that be better suited for a mesoanalyst? In concert with the radar operator, what would your recommendation be?
Yes, exactly. Like you said, sometimes you can't do everything at once when you're working in the radar desk. So definitely, our office kind of struggled with being short-staffed for a couple of years when I started, but now we're fully staffed. So we like to have one person doing mesoanalysis during these type of events. So having somebody kind of looking at this and saying, hey, that storm is it's producing a lot more lightning, you might want to focus on it more, is always good. And we have a policy where, like, if you notice it, say something. Don't just assume that everybody else knows about it. So like you said, kind of spreading that out, the workload, and not expecting the warning forecaster to do everything is very helpful.
Right, and I liked your word earlier, the triage of that as well. It's good to grab your attention and help you to triage the most important storm. So let's go to some other questions here. We've collected a few. I appreciate folks bringing this in. This one's from Brian Mata. Have you had any experience with the rest of the GLM grids, total optical energy or minimum flash area?
Yeah, good question. I also tend to look at those if I have the time. I didn't look at those in the study since I had a lot of research has shown that flash extent density is perhaps the most useful. It would be very interesting in the future to also look at those. But yeah, for this study, I didn't really investigate those.
All right, thank you. Looks like we've got our next question here from Mike Stavish. What do you think of the feasibility of forecasters using the tracking mediogram tool in AWIPS currently to monitor lightning jumps, FED, etc.?
Yeah, good question. That could also be very useful. And I actually, after another presentation that I gave of this, I believe they are in the process of developing another storm tracking tool for lightning trends. It's kind of in the initial phase of the like a hazardous weather testbed type thing. So within the next couple years, hopefully that will also be made available. But yeah, there's a couple methods here where you can track storms, it looks like.
Excellent, excellent. All right, we'll move on to our next question from Tim Humphrey. You noted in your survey results that many expressed not being comfortable enough with these products to incorporate them frequently. Did you find similar results in your own office? And if so, what actions have you taken to make sure your staff is more comfortable with these products?
Yeah, good question. So one thing the past couple of years, we do monthly drills. So we have this month is the severe weather drill, and then we're doing our office severe weather workshop that we do one in the fall and one in the spring. So we, on part of the drill, we have the ProbSevere and GLM information put in, and then we have it for different weather events, but for severe weather, we have kind of like a cheat sheet, a one pager for like whoever's working the warning desk. So we have those sent out, and then everybody tends to have them on their Google Drive. And then we also have a printed laminated copy in the office. So we tend to, I like to at least have that on my desk when I'm working the warning desk. So those are two ways that we tend to make sure everyone's up to date on it.
All right, very good. Look to see if we have any new questions added, and at the moment we don't. I'll again encourage everybody who wants to ask a question either to raise their hand or type that into the chat room. While we wait for another question there, Trent, if you wouldn't mind, going to your slide 24, the Morgantown, Pennsylvania tornado.
24. Also, if anyone wants to email me questions, by and large, feel free. I'm more than happy to discuss this.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this is the one. So, to maybe some of our more folks who are perhaps inexperienced with this data set, or you're maybe feeling uncomfortable with it, where would you start to feel uncomfortable with the data here as something that's value added, something that's drawn your attention with this particular storm? If you're looking at this and you say all of a sudden this is a trend or a signal that to me that's meaningful, what would be in this time graph here of ProbSevere, ProbTor, your flash rates and flash channel density and so on? What would draw your eye and say, hey, this is something that's important?
Okay, yeah. I'm assuming you can see the cursor. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. So I believe at this point, the storm was in State College's CWA, and exactly as they did up here, I think they had like a severe thunderstorm warning on it. Probably right in here, I would start watching it more closely. And but yeah, for this day, we had several cases where we got ProbSevere and ProbTor values over 50%. And these two parameters, I would not at all get caught up in the actual percent value, because we've had cases. I had a case in here where we had a tornado and the ProbTor value was like 20%. So don't get caught up in the number, but relative to the day, I mean, if you've already had some storms, if that's jumping up higher than you've noticed, that's definitely, it's time to start paying attention to it. But yeah, right in here, this became the strongest storm of the day so far. So seeing that trend goes up and then it stays high is, and of course we had damage as it moves out of State College's area right around here into our forecast area. And so yeah, definitely, if you see it jumping up and staying high, that's something to watch.
Yeah, and certainly, anything that you see in the flash rate or flash channel density that would stick out.
Yeah, so down here, as I mentioned, it tends to be a little chaotic because the storm will cycle, and there's no difference between storms that produce tornadoes and don't. But seeing that the storm had pulsed up pretty strongly here, and again, that would be looking on the satellite imagery where you had GLM overlaid. That would be a pretty warm color there. So unfortunately, I didn't have that archived when this case happened. So and it's really difficult to go back and get that data. But definitely, if you see that warm color starting to pop out, this storm also, if I go back to the radar image, it was kind of a right mover, even though the storm motion was a little unusual this day, which this is it here. It tended to be a right mover. It tended to go a little bit more south than the other storms. So everything, like I kind of said, tended to say, hey, the storm needs to be watched. And going through the loop, I believe it was like right in there when it, the flash rate jumps tended to continue to go up and then stay high.
Okay, gotcha. Excellent. We do have another question for you. This one from Bob LaPlante. Do you think that using average flash area would be a better indicator of a very active updraft region of a storm and perhaps higher tornado potential?
That's a good question. Yes, I think flash area would definitely be important. One thing that just jumps into my mind when this is mentioned is I know depending on where you are in the country, because we can get some like MCS instances here, you can get some large flashes, like kind of hybrid flashes in those cases where you get it'll be a cloud to ground strike, but you'll have these long feeders that go into the stratiform region. So you can get some large flashes in those cases. And actually with GLM, they detected I think the longest flash in the world, which was like over Oklahoma, and it was like 300 kilometers long. So sometimes you have to kind of know where you are in the storm and what your storm mode is. But yeah, if you start seeing some larger flashes, that's also something to pay attention to.
All right, great. We have another question now from Jim Ledoux. This is a question about the sequence of events as a storm intensifies. I can imagine a growth in convective cloud visible in satellite, then an increase in reflectivity aloft, followed by an increase in flash extent density. But do you notice that in reality?
Actually, yeah, pretty often we do. And also with looking at the satellites, I guess I'll go back to this image. I don't know if there was any that happened on this day. I also like to look for those above anvil cirrus plumes. If you see those, I forget where this was in here. That's another good sign to look for. So satellite, now that we have such good imagery, I don't know where it was. Now that we have such good imagery coming from GOES, there's a lot that we can learn from it. And especially if you're in a mesoscale sector that day, take advantage of that data. I always have like a visible satellite loop up when I'm working the warning desk. It's very helpful.
All right, thanks, Trent. Jordan, you have a question if you wanted to chime in.
Yeah, thanks, Trent, for your presentation. Looking at this from the Office of Obs perspective, I had two questions for you. One of them is, we've had lightning data from terrestrial sources for quite a while, and that's in a strike format. And I realize that the flashes from GLM and the strike from the terrestrial network are not the same. But in your experience talking to forecasters, is the conversion, if you will, of forecasters adopting GLM or using it in tandem with the terrestrial networks making headway into the warning process? And two, do you think that it would be beneficial to present the terrestrial lightning data in the same way as we present the GLM, since we really can't go the opposite direction?
Looking at like a local perspective, I would say our level of comfort has increased with our office. I'm not sure as a whole. From the survey, there seemed to be some offices were hitting more on its use. So I would say as an agency, it's increasing. But given that the science is still evolving, there's still a lot that we have to learn about it. But I would like to see some type of training developed, just kind of giving better guidelines on what to look for, what these mean. And the second question, yeah, I think looking at the ground-based networks too is definitely helpful. Depends on the day. If you know, sometimes they don't detect inter-cloud lightning as well. But yeah, definitely you don't want to just rely on GLM. So yeah, looking at both trends is definitely important, and I try to look at both when I'm working, I would say. Hopefully that answers your question. So.
Yeah, I guess maybe just to clarify that, and then we'll get one more question here from Javier. But do you think the actual presentation of what it looks like, of averaging it over area, would be a good way to incorporate that data if there was training to match that implementation?
Okay, I see what you mean. I believe if I'm interpreting that right, I believe I kind of did that in what the red line here. So that is summing up all the flashes within the storm from the ENTI network.
Right.
And
but
then
I don't think that's currently presented to forecasters and AWIPs as a plan view 2D plot.
yeah, no, I don't think it is. So that would definitely be helpful.
Okay, thanks. Javier? Not sure if Javier's on mute or if there's a problem with his mic.
Looks like his mic is on there.
We'll give him 30 more seconds.
Give
We'll give
him
him
a
more
second
than 1
here.
second to figure it out.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we got you.
There we go.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I'm the new satellite liaison at the Ocean and Weather Prediction Center. And Trent, great talk. This is kind of an open question to everyone. Part of my job description, especially when it concerns GOES, is to develop and disseminate trainings on how to get this satellite information into forecasters' hands and make it useful. So I wanted just to gauge interest. If people are interested in this, if they would consume some training for this, or if there's anything available right now.
I would say if you follow it's not really like a video training, but I had the link here in the beginning to a great PDF that explains at least GLM and sorry, right there. If you follow that link there on the bottom, that was a great PDF where it refreshed my memory on some things. That would be a great place to start. You could easily make a presentation, like a slideshow from it. That's definitely where I would start. You know, I haven't done a search on like the CLC if there's any new lightning trainings on there. Maybe someone like Jim Ledoux would know better if he's still on.
I'm still on. I'm sorry about that. I heard my name, but nothing else.
Yeah, maybe you would know if there's some more training or recent training on using lightning in and warning?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. One is I know that our latest warning ops course, Severe, has got updates to, I think, the GLM as well as the ENI and others. And we're just about to put out our final edit stages of our data fusion lessons, which will be going out. That's being done between Dan Bykos and myself.
Oh, and it looks like Scott posted a link to some good GLM training. That's right. Sorry, Scott. I should have. you would know.
Okay. I think
Well, it looks
we
like
will-
that's it, Jordan.
Yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there. I appreciate it, Trent, for being with us. Great presentation today. And thank you to you as well, John, for the facilitation of the discussion. I thought we got some very good items out of that discussion, hopefully helpful to our participants in this call as well today. Great participation, nearly 100 people. I know there's active ongoing severe weather there in the southeast, so appreciate people taking at least a little time. And just a reminder to join us next week. We actually are going to be talking more about GLM as we head into this severe weather season. Be Thursday, March 25th at 12 noon Eastern time. Joseph Patton from Maryland Success. And as always, feel free to get in touch with our Tower S team if they can help you in any way. Kashad Bowman's great at, if you need the slides, if you need the YouTube link, please feel free to get in touch with him. So until then, please stay well and hope you'll join us next week. Take care, everybody. Thanks all.